Ah. Situated in the Horn of Africa, the Socotra archipelago is approximately 90 kilometers off the coast of Somalia and 360 kilometers from the coast of Yemen. Socotra is a mythical place. Since the 60th century BC, it was visited by Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, and was known as Dioscorides. It was also visited by Arab and Indian traders from frankincense, aloe sap, and the so mysterious dragon blood. In the middle of the 1st century after death, and for more than 1,500 years, Socotra was Christian. Indeed, it is said that the boat of one of Jesus' apostles, Thomas, was wrecked near the coast. In the 9th century, the island was colonized by the Mahari, a tribe from South Yemen. Its inhabitants essentially feed on dates, which they keep, even nowadays, in goat skins. My search for phoenix continued on the island because it could be the origin of the date palm, Phoenix dactylifera. The archipelago consists of 4 islands. The largest, Socotra, covers 3,325 square kilometers and is 135 kilometers long by 33 kilometers wide. Abdelkouri is 133 square kilometers. The brother islands are the smallest. Samha is 41 square kilometers. Darsa is only 16 square kilometers. The archipelago is cut off from June till September by violent monsoon winds. Arrival by plane is spectacular, with a panoramic vision of the island while descending to the runway. It was not submerged during Mesozoic times, and this has given rise to many endemic species, making of Socotra a real living laboratory. However, the island is generally dry, with 130–170 millimeters a year, but probably more inland. I began the ascent, and at about 600 meters in altitude, I met a grass snake, which was said to live on the coast, or simply it had not been discovered in the mountains. Interesting plant discovered in the 70s, but was only described in 2007 by John Lavranos and Tom McCoy. We find a distinct aloe berry called Aloe hagerensis. This is a green-leaved ecotype, not a rare species. Here, a caterpillar devours the leaves of aloes and surrounding shrubs. Cissus paniculata uses trees over the cliffs to develop stems and panicles of small red fruits. At 850 meters in altitude, the humidity is high. Small brooks flow, allowing the establishment of various plants. Here we found Exacum affine, named Persian but really Socotran violet, a small endemic which embalms the air of its fragrance. It lives together with a beautiful fern, Pteris vitata. Among the moss, we can see, even in summer, Crassula lanceolata, also named Crassula schimperi. It forms small clumps between cliffs, as well as the tiny Portulaca quadrifida. And Peperonia blanda. At the top of the Adu di Malo Pass, the humidity is constant, and among some cows grazing in these unexpected prairies, we can see small mushrooms in quantity, psilocybe, associated with dung and well known for their psychotropic properties, and growing Socotra, they are not consumed. At this altitude, Cephaloproton socotranus is a food of choice for the cattle, but also for an endemic soapberry bug, Leptocoris bahalam. Coming down from the Adu di Malo pass in the same day is not easy. Camping is much advised. Anyway, it is necessary to arrive at Hadibo before night. The next day, we leave for a new destination. Another extremely interesting place is the region of Home Hill and the Hamadero Plateau, situated a little more east of the island. From the ascent, one of the most common plants is Cissus subaphylla. In common with anglet stems, Cissus hamaderoensis grows mainly at the top of the plateau. In the middle of a steep cliff, we believe that something is moving. At all it seems impossible. And for plants, the battle is not won. It's just a goat. We found here the most common of the Socotran frankincense trees, Boswellia elongata. In spite of the fact that each distribution of Boswellia species overlaps, it is relatively easy to recognize all 7 which grow on the island, basically for their foliage. Interesting fact, here is the youngest Dracena cinnabari met in Hamadero, alone on a rocky peak. The regeneration of the Socotran dragon's tree has apparently ended. We only found very few young plants. Like in the Canary Island and in the island of La Réunion, Dracena do not germinate anymore in habitat, probably due to a climatic change which began there a long time ago and continues even nowadays. Only the young Dendrosisio socotrana, which are protected from goats, can claim to become adult and to grow together with a huge dragon tree. Dracena is still used by socotrees to get the dragon's blood, obtaining a coloring agent. The famous violins of Stradivarius were covered with this varnish, and resultantly, dragon's tree are covered with scars. Some trees are almost identical to the dragon's tree to survive in the same way, so the well-named Euphorbia arbuscola. On the plateau, the landscape is majestic. We felt as if we were visiting another planet. There are still species to be discovered there. The Opachical, which I was not able to identify. The degree of biodiversity is impressive, and the endemism of the botanical species is very high. Of the 850 plant species found on the island of Socotra, 308 are endemic. This is why the Socotra archipelago earned its name Galapagos of the Indian Ocean. On Hamadero, we found Kalanchoe farinacea, which is in fact a very common plant on all the island. Much rarer, little known, Kalanchoe robusta looks at first sight like a crassula with cotyledon leaves. The flowers are orange to red, although rarely seen. Euphorbia schimperi with yellowish-green bracts is more lax and decumbent, while near the coast or in the mountains it makes a small compact bush. Among the 7 succulent Euphorbia existing in Socotra, we found Euphorbia spiralis, generally not spiraled, as the name would imply. Among the 6 species of Socotran aloes, the most common is Aloe perrii, whose sap is still harvested for medicinal purpose. A succulent Asclepiad, well known and searched by collectors, is Echidnopsis grandis, which also found in Kenya. The different flowers justify the new name for the Socotran plant, Echidnopsis sordida. Here are some non-succulent plants which are part of the Hamadero landscape. The very rare Dorstenia socotrana grows in pockets of erosion on limestone cliffs. The fauna is interesting. The Somali starling and the many endemic lizards we found almost everywhere. For butterflies, time of reproduction has come. This is a peaceful landscape, that of Hamadero. Now we go west, and having passed the road to the airport, we continue towards a small fisherman's village and follow the northern coast. Really, the goats eat everything, and they are not reluctant in devouring stems of Euphorbia arbuscula. The coast is colonized by halophytes like Alocnemum strobulaceum. Lycium socotranum, solanacea, can also be found here. 2 of the 3 species of Tetrania found in Socotra grow here. Tetraena alba, Tetraena simplex, and further northwest, and signaled here for the first time, Zygophyllum smithi. Elements spoiling this idyllic landscape, such as rusty tanks, recall the time of the Soviet occupation in the 80s. A little further on the plain is an Asclepiad which I was able to see almost everywhere in the deserts, from the Sahara to the Thar Desert in India, Calotropis procera. This non-succulent is commonly named Sodom's apple because the fruit is misleading. There is no pulp inside. And here is one of the secret beds kept by Socotris, a legend Venetians would spread for centuries. Socotra is the island of Phoenix. Here is the phoenix bird, that which was reborn from his ashes. In fact, ashes of the medical birds were only the resin of frankincense trees, and the bird is the Egyptian vulture, of which Socotra shelters the largest colony in all the Indian Ocean. The mystery of the phoenix is resolved. On these large plains, the recent rains created an extraordinary microvegetation. Some fabaceae, like Indigofera, were used to obtain indigo. Here can be seen many interesting and sometimes unique plants. Regrettably, if we do nothing to protect this Eden, it could soon disappear because it entices many greeds. Situated in the northwest, one of the most beautiful places of the island is certainly Kalanchoe and its turquoise blue waters. Pebble beaches are covered with polymorphic Adenium socotranum, which manage to grow at only a dozen meters from the ocean. The climate is responsible for this. At this latitude, the annual average temperature is 27 to 37 degrees centigrade. Endemic to the island, the Socotra chameleon is found everywhere. Each step is very slow in contrast with the quickness it captures the insects on which it feeds. Another animal introduced and rather destructive it is considered to annihilate many plant species is a goat. Approximately 70,000 exist in all the island. In fact, a recent investigation demonstrated that it is not always true, as the goats are not necessarily the origin of all the threats which lie heavily on the Socotran plants. Only some are directly affected, like Dorstenia gigas. For example, the croton of Socotra, Croton socotranus, is extremely grazed by goats, but it is far from being in danger of extinction. You should not ever forget the economical importance of the goats in the Socotri society, for which the resources, apart those resulting from the seed and the dates from the date palm, are rather limited. So they need the goats. In spite of this introduction, the local fauna remains important, with more than 1,000 terrestrial species. The ascent of the cliff in Jabal Mahali looked difficult for me to manage. My journey at the end of March 2009 should be mentioned because of an unexpected heart attack 2 days before leaving Spain. I cannot stop myself to think of what would have happened if it had taken place in Socotra. I needed twice as much time to reach the top. And yes, the landscape literally takes one breath away. Sheer cliffs of the preferred home of a number of succulent species, Adenium socotranum, Euphorbia, spiralis, ficus vasta, and Boswellia bullata are among the plants we could meet in these conditions. At the top of the mountain, the wind is strong. It blows like a vengeance. Among limestone rocks, plants grow there, such aloe berry, Euphorbia schimperi in flowers at this time, and the most common of Echidnopsis. Although it is always a little bit difficult to discover, Echidnopsis socotrana. Well, it's time to think of bring us down. The vehicle is no more than a small spot far off in the landscape. Meha is a little visited dry plain, although it is situated only some kilometers from Kalanchoe. Here, the aloe berry look different, but desiccated. Besides them, and virtually unknown, a small myrrh tree grows there, Commiphora. It grows at ground level, probably because of strong winds, so it looks like a bonsai and produces as much sought after myrrh by the local tribes which live in this plain. In these small villages, there are not many things. We took it up from the small grocer's shops of the place, and although our purchases were very modest, it is more of a gesture to help business. Further, the plateau showed a different vegetation. Hibiscus dirifam, a shrubby species, and a very common plant on Socotra, Buxus hildebranti, a nurse plant. The plants of Socotra are investigated for the pharmaceutical industry, and the Buxus, as well as Dendrosisio socotrana, Ruitania rebecki, and Dracena cinnameri, have demonstrated the highest toxicity against tumor of two types of cancer of the tongue, the urinary system, and finally breast cancer. Succulent plants may help the world from grave disorders. Thanks to the scientific research, we only hope that it will have positive and economic consequences for our Socotri friends. A little more in altitude, we found aloe berry again, a little bit different, probably because of the rather hard local conditions. Flowers were red at first, then fading to yellow. The rare tree we can find here are mere trees, Commiphora socotrana. At this location, Cissus rubaphylla and Cissus hamadelloensis grow together, the first one with flattened stems, the second with angled stems. They are really easy to recognize from each other. A small herbaceous euphorbia can be observed here and there, Euphorbia kishenensis, with beautiful white bracts. As we move forward and higher, the degree of humidity is more important, and we discover magnificent ferns like Portulaca viridis. The fauna is quite different, with several rare species of Acrididae. Then a limestone plateau appeared towards Tahoe with large trees. A somewhat flat stem form of Euphorbia arbuscula, variety montana, and many young plants. Very healthy plants. A mere tree grows sympatrically at the same place, Commiphora planifrons, with a beautiful foliage. The primitive pomegranate, Punica protopunica, is also growing there, in flowers and in fruit. Among rocks, we could see bushes looking like succulent. This is a good surprise, Senecio or Cleinia scotti. I was not expecting this. In the same type of habitat, we had another surprise with the Peperomia tetraphylla. Then a plant that would classify rather in Urticaceae, while it is in fact an Euphorbia, Traga balfouriana. Here, animal species indicate the area has some water running at the surface. A teeny endemic crab, of which I wondered what it was doing there in the mountains. We headed towards the Dixam Plateau, where the wealth of the flora, without forgetting the fauna too, is exceptional. At the top of the plateau, the strong winds shape plants in a constant way during 6 months a year. clouds are warning of rain, but tranquility reigns and everybody attends to its favorite activities. It is likely that more than half of the Socotra insects are still unknown, and that it remains to discover and describe new species. We find here and there remains of ground snails, but the rains are going to bring new generation to life. There are 225 species of birds on Socotra, among only 5 are endemic. Why, they fly. The Dixon Plateau is populated with giant dragon trees, all more or less covered with scars made to extract the dragon's blood, recognized for healing wounds of the Roman gladiators. It is also used to dye marble and plaster, as well as for photo engraving and for enameling. We don't know exactly the age of the Dracena, but we think that they are approximately 700 years old. Because there is almost no regeneration of the species, it is likely that we are in presence of plants in process of extinction when they will have carried out their life cycle, unless a sudden climatic change allows these again, and in the meantime the germination in situ of these plants and their conservation. Well, the Egyptian television Nile TV asked for an interview on the spot in Dixon. The Bedouin children were perplexed on what was happening here. One of the invasive plants is Argemon mexicana, papaveraceae, which I have seen practically all over the desert in the world, and which is also and regrettably present on Socotra. It's a real threat for the local flora and will be difficult to eradicate. One of the Socotran Asclepiads is also one of the most spectacular, Callaluma socotrana. Its flowers are of an orange red to dark red, and plants are very common all over the island. They seem to have a rather short life cycle, and it is not rare to see whole colonies dried out, but which are quickly replaced by new generation. Despite its name, Callaluma socotrana is not endemic to Socotra. It can also be found in Somalia and Ethiopia. On the Dixon Plateau, a tree appeared from time to time, tortuous and rather ordinary after all the marvels we have seen. We could think that it is a Boswellia or Commiphora. It is also an extremely interesting succulent plant, Euphorbia socotrana. Flowers and fruit are clearly from this genus, but even there, we notice no regeneration of the species. We found Ceropegia with an exuberant flowering. Nowadays, the sap is still used as in aloe vera. Of all aloe species known for now, only 5 proved their medicinal virtues: aloe vera, aloe ferox, aloe arborescens, aloe saponaria, and aloe peri. It is obvious that in the next few years, this list will increase as investigations are concluded. The rather common Euphorbia spiralis appeared again, while other plants like Commiphora, Foscale were seen for the first time, as well as the beautiful Asteraceae, Eriops arabicus. Among the 3 species of Kalanchoe known in Socotra, we found Kalanchoe farinacea again, also known under the name of Kalanchoe scapigera in collection. This last one is native of Angola and has yellow flowers. Kalanchoe farinacea has red flowers and is endemic to Socotra. Kalanchoe rotundifolia is also wrongly named Kalanchoe socotrana, although it is found on the African continent. It is so prolific that it can easily become an invasive in collections with a favorable climate. At the same location, Kalanchoe robusta is more common than on Hamadero. According to John Lavranos, it may reach up to 1 meter high. A friend, it will be everywhere. These 2 last years, I had the luck to observe this magnificent Kalanchoe in flowers. At the same location, we found also an unexpected small population of Echidnopsis bentii. Finally, a small discrete plant, Ceropegia affinis, was also found, one of the 2 species of this genus known to grow in Socotra. This plant prefers the shade and is very difficult to track down when not in flower. And at the top of sheer cliffs, we preserve plants which could be adenium because of their morphological resemblance. In fact, they were Dorstenia gigas. It is incredible to note that plants which can exceed a meter in diameter are clumped in small cavities, some of them the thickness of a fist. It is apparently the only secure habitat for Dorstenia because of the goats, which are fond of them. These crevices in the rock allow Plectranthus socotranum to develop in much better conditions than on the plateau. We could admire a dragon tree settled down in a crack and which is probably one of the youngest on the island. Following the streams of Dixam, like in Madagascar or in Cuba, the limestone is affected by the streaming water and given a characteristic karstic dog teeth relief. The landscape made us to go back thousands of years in the time because it reminds me how the Sahara may have looked before the climatic change. The greenstone serves still nowadays to the tribe of the island, but are no more than prehistoric vestige in the Sahara. Today, Socotra, like other regions of the world, is evolving toward a more pronounced aridity, the duration of which is probably thousands of years. What we observe here is like the whole Saharan landscape, land full of life and rivers before it became the deserts we know today, where we now find no more than dry streams and fossilized fishes. We left the Dixam Plateau to begin the descent towards Wadi Dihero. The track is horrible, but a beautiful landscape is a reward. Boswellia discoridis appears at the edge of the track with characteristic leaves and also with flowers. In the depth of the canyon, the vegetation is exuberant. Here, date palms are magnificent. In the background, white trunks of dendrosicios, and on the crest a row of giant dragon trees. While my guide Hamed I looked at the document I brought with me, an Egyptian vulture came to quench itself near him. Indeed, it happened to have a part of our meal. We continued the observation of the Wadi Dihero flora, and here are a few of the photographic species. These epiphytic plants look like a Sansevieria arenbergi. In fact, this is an orchid, Alophia petersi, one of the few growing of the island. We found it as an epiphyte or rupicolus. Its pseudobulbs are very big. A cissus drew my attention. It is a new species that I named Cissus salehi in honor to my faithful guide Ahmed Saleh. This is the only Socotran species dedicated to a Socotri inhabitant. A dwarf Azoaceae grows in sand between rocks. Corbichonia decumbens, which has already seen in Kenya, is just beginning to flower. And here a Zygophyllaceae, Tribulus arabicus. Also, and lastly, to finish, we went to little visited places, or never. Jabal Ntolo and Jabal Buzaili. We camped there. Jabal Ntolo is a mountain which peaks at about 800 meters in altitude. A Socotri, Abu Saliman, grazes his goats at the top, and he agreed to show us the way, a dangerous track at the edge of a vertiginous precipice. It was worth the sacrifice. From 500 meters in altitude, we discovered the first aloe Jaoyong, of which some were in flowers. Plants have a characteristic epidermis and an orange-colored flower. This rare species was described as recently as 2004. Bushes of Scrophulariaceae Campilanthus spinosus appeared, as well as the beautiful Cyanixia socotrana of the Iridaceae family. Along the road we passed a bush of Euphorbia spiralis, the only plant that we found justifying its name. Maybe it was for the description. Sometimes it grows sympatrically with aloe Jaoyong. Here, a very compact and new species of Euphorbia that I described as Euphorbia ntoloensis, from the Jabal Ntolo. A rare succulent plant of the Caryophyllaceae family can be found on Jabal Ntolo, Gymnocarpus curiensis. It is found also on Abdil Kuri, that is why the name is coriensis. Another surprise on the way down, in a crevice of the limestone, was a small orchid in flower, Habenaria socotrana. Knowing that Abu Saliman takes this way up every day to go and see his goats, I nicknamed him Habu Superman, which pleased Ahmed a lot. We have arrived exhausted towards the top of Jabal Tolo. There was a purpose of our ascent, and it was in flower. I took the plant is mostly buried in the crack or under a shrub. This was a magnificent Socotrella doliconecma, described in 2002. Very few people had had the chance to see it in habitat. Abu Saliman tore away a piece from it. My goats practically ate all of them, he said, eating the remaining one. No more Socotrella. Oh, at the top we found nothing else than this only plant, but in the descent, however, we tracked down more plants protected from the greediness of goats and from Abu Saliman. It was during one of my trips further west that a large particle new Euphorbia was discovered, Euphorbia marie-cladicac. The bracts appear after the leaves dry. The plants are apparently browsed by goats, and some are shaped like Boswellia nana. bonsai. At the same location, I found in rock cavities a teeny plant with rounded leaves that I named Portulaca monanthoides. It is in cultivation now. I put it in cultivation. Jabal Buzaili is a little more westward, and after having a short meal, we left in this direction. On the road, we took a soco tree, gave a lift, we helped us as a guide. It explains that all plants are important in the soco tree society because all of them are useful. For example, the latex of Euphorbia socotrana is used as bird lime to capture small birds. And during this conversation, without worrying too much about our presence under a jatropha, a Socotra starling was fighting with a seed. What we can do when we are hungry. Well, the road towards Jabal Buzaili is very interesting because different species grow here. Commelina albescens was in flower. We believe that Echidnopsis sordida grew only eastern of the island, according to the books, but we also found it in the west and was very healthy when protected from goats. The same thing can be said about the very cryptic and rare Euphorbia hamadrutica, found in Arabia, but here it is rare. Another surprise, Echidnopsis inconspicua, indicated by grains to be 190 meters in altitude in Wadi Hayek, and that we found here at 570 meters in altitude towards Jabal Buzaili. On our journey to the car, Wahid, my driver, had a discussion with three men. One of them prohibited passage and threatened us. He said that foreigners come to poison them. It seemed that he was speaking about insect collectors, and this is why they were a little bit aggressive. This attitude changed when I showed the copy of my book on Socotra flora and explained that I was there to finish a work on Socotra flora. Finally, they allowed us to go. If you go to Socotra inland, you're making a journey of 2,000 years back in time, where really quiet and peaceful people live in accordance with nature. No tap water, no electricity, no shoes, no more than their goats and their days. The simple resources of their environment, a dry desert. They still have their own language, their own culture. The children are precious human beings. They don't go every day to school, but they have a real education. They kindly offer the tea with goat milk, perfumed in the campfire and full of generosity. But do they have a good future? We are now in front of Jabal Buzaili, the last place that we can see in the background. There is an Echidnopsis which mounts almost everywhere. The very common Echidnopsis socotrana. Many plants were in full growth and some were in flower. There are 5 species of Echidnopsis in Socotra, but without flowers it is always difficult to determine which is which. When we look for plants, we sometimes meet with an unexpected animal. Here, a huge endemic spider, Monocentropus balfouri. Again, we found Socotrella doliconecma hidden under thorny bushes. At the bottom of the cavity in limestone, the very rare and tiny Sarcostema socotranum appeared. In cliff crevices, we found some small grazed Dorstenia. Plants are visible only when the new leaves appear. Surprise! Aloe jawillon grows also on Jabal Buzail in isolated groups growing at ground level with an amazing yellowish-green epidermis. Some plants were going to flower while showing the short and branched typical inflorescence. It grows together with aloe berry without showing any hybridization, although the flowering of both may coincide at some time. The color of aloe berry flower, its branched out inflorescence, as well as its bluish epidermis, allow to appreciate the differences with aloe jawillon, whose flowers are orange colored, with a short and simpler inflorescence and a non-bluish epidermis. Finally, we discovered another jewel, Aloe squarrosa, at the edge of the precipice in limestone cavities. What a delight for hay on these mountains where we found 3 different species of Socotran aloe. But I did not know that I was about to make an unexpected discovery. A stabilized hybrid between aloe berry and squarrosa, which I described in 2010 under the name of Aloe buzairiensis. The plants look like Aloe squarrosa, but they live in Buxus indelbranti shrubs. They are larger, much larger, stem is erect, less speckled, bluish and with red flowers, while Aloe squarrosa is very small, has a light green epidermis, orange colored flower, and grows on steep cliffs. We could go back to Haribo with great satisfaction. This last journey was fantastic. Furthermore, 5 new species of succulent plants were discovered during these trips, and we expect more novelties to come from Socotra. As promised, I gave to the Socotra Women's Association hundreds of my book Succulent Plants of Socotra, hoping that it can help them by selling it to tourists, partly to finance their project in Iceland, where the women were not veiled few years ago. Islamism has entered Socotra, as well as the cart, their drug. The drug of Yemen, not Socotra. Several trips at different seasons were necessary to realize this work. I only hope that this made you a little aware that growers are custodians of the plant reserves of our planet. It is likely that although you've never been to Socotra before, you grow one or several species of this fabulous island. Maybe now you will look at them in a different way. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you like Socotra.